Welcome back to the program. But let me just read from the notes I have in front of me here. It says that the Canisius College Board of Trustees announced that Steve K. Stoute, JD, Vice President for Strategic Initiatives and Chief of Staff at DePaul University in Chicago, Illinois, was named the institution's 25th president, beginning his tenure on July 1, 2022. Mr. Stoute was selected following a 10-month nationwide search led by a 15-member presidential search committee representing the college's constituencies and appointed by the Board of Trustees. Mr. Stoute joined DePaul, the largest Catholic university in the U.S., in June 2018 to serve as its Chief of Staff. He also has served as Vice President for Strategic Initiatives since June 2020. In his role, Mr. Stoute serves as the University President's Senior Advisor. His responsibilities include facilitating the implementation of the university's strategic plan, leading transformative institutional projects, as well as serving as administrative liaison to the Board of Trustees on key executive and strategic matters. There are other things that we will tell you about as we go ahead, but we're talking with this gentleman because, after all, at the beginning of all, is that he is a Trinidad and Tobagonian by birth. He was born in Trinidad and Tobago, went to the United States and went on a track that led him to where he is now. We're happy to have him as our guest this morning. Good morning, sir. Good to see you.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of that. And what and I'm reading something else again from what it says here is that. So when you joined DePaul, that was the largest Catholic university in the United States. It is, and you were serving there. You served as Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. Give us a sense of what that is.
Sure. So we have a very broad and ambitious strategic plan. It has 118 goals and strategies included in the plan. So my responsibility is to work with my colleagues across the institution to advance some of those initiatives, whether they be things we do in the community, innovative partnerships, in particular in Chicago, enrolling new students through new programs. So any number of things that we do to help move the institution forward, my responsibility is to have a university perspective on those things and to engage constituents broadly, faculty, staff, students, members in the community in implementing and tracking our progress on those goals.
Right. And there's so much to take from that, because that's just one of the features. And I was going through these notes here, and somebody was describing you as a sort of exceptional kind of leader. But I'll come to that in a moment. Let's go back to the basics. So you were born in Trinidad and Tobago. Where were you born? You went to the United States in 2000, and we're talking about 2 decades between when you started and where you are now. So let's talk about where that comes from. So where in Trinidad and Tobago is home, and the people there who might be watching, what do you say to them?
Home is Aruca. Home is Aruca.
Yes.
Born in Port of Spain, but grew up in Aruca, went to CIC and went to Fatima. I did my O-levels at St. Mary's College and my A-levels at Fatima. And it's been 22 years since I left Trinidad, but Trinidad is home.
Yeah. But you seem to have been on a track. Going forward all over those 22 years from where you started when you went to Seton Hall University in New Jersey, and you were an athlete. You were a football player and that kind of thing. On the way up, right?
Yeah. So for me and my parents didn't go to college, right? Like so many of my peers, my colleagues. My parents didn't go to college, but growing up in Trinidad, growing up in Aruca, it was important for them that I have the opportunity to go to college, not so much because of what it would do for me and my life, but for my children and their children. So it was really about generational opportunity for my family. And so my parents were very, very firm and very definitive that you would go off to CIC, you would go off to Fatima, but when that's done, you'll go away and you'll go to college, and whatever success you have, you will bring other people along with you. You will change your life. You will change our family's life. And that has always stayed with me in everything I've done. So it was Seton Hall and going on to graduate school and law school, and everything thereafter was driven by how my parents can emphasize the value, the transformative value of education and higher education.
Yeah, and from Seton Hall, you went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. A lot of people talk about that, another major sort of step in this direction.
Right. My master's degree from North Carolina is in exercise sports science. So there was a time in my career, Mr. Johnson, when I thought I wanted to work in athletics, to work in sports. I grew up playing football, cricket, basketball in Trinidad. I played football in college at Seton Hall. So that's what I knew. Right? I knew sports. I knew athletics. And NCAA Division I athletics is the highest level in college. So I thought for some part of my career that's what I wanted to do with my life, is devote myself to providing opportunities for other students who wanted to compete in athletics in college. So went to North Carolina, one of the premier master's programs in sports administration, and enjoyed that experience. But during that time, I also had the opportunity to serve on the board of Regents, which is the governing board of Seton Hall University. And so in that 3 years, I learned so much about what it takes to effectively run and administer a large, complex academic institution.
So how do you think...
opened my eyes to athletics being one small piece of the bigger puzzle. And that's where I really got interested in something more than athletics, and that was university-wide administration.
Yeah. What do you think propelled your movement, from there to the Board of Regents? So you're coming in there as somebody who's moving up through the sporting tracks, and you end up you getting a place on the Board of Regents.
Personal relationships, right? So the opportunity for me was created through my relationship with the Seton Hall University president at the time. So Seton Hall at the time had about 8,000, 9,000 students. But our president was ever visible. He was on campus. He was meeting with students. He was eating lunch in the dining hall. And I had a chance to meet him and interact with him. And he asked me the question, from Trinidad, why Seton Hall? Why you chose Seton Hall? And my response to that question, I remember he said, it was so moving that he would never forget it. And if I needed anything, to let him know. And over the course of my 4 years, we developed a relationship such that when I graduated and went on to North Carolina, and this opportunity on the board opened up, he called me and said, I think you would be good at this. I think you would represent our students well. You'll represent Seton Hall well. So we'd like you to consider this and interview for it. And so his knowledge of me, my passion for the institution and for education is really what created the opportunity to be on the board. And that 3 years really transformed how I thought about my career and how I could serve future generations of students like me, people who don't usually have an opportunity to go to college, to be successful, not just to go to college, right? But to succeed in that endeavor and to go on to leadership in whatever their field may be. So that's always been something I've been grateful for. It's about relationships, it's about people, and it's about serving others. So that someone did that for me in my college president at Seton Hall, Monsignor Sharon, and I look forward to doing that for so many students at Canisius.
Yeah, and then from there you went to the University of Pennsylvania and the law school. That's where you got your JD.
Yes, correct. And so higher education leadership in the U.S. is it's predicated on your having a terminal degree. So to be president of a college, of a university, one of the minimum criteria is to have a terminal degree in your field. And so for me, I chose law school. I chose legal education because of the skill set, because of the way it teaches you to think, process large quantities of information, and make sound, reasoned decisions and judgments. Right, so that is what prompted me to go to law school, all the while knowing, Mr. Johnson, that I wanted to be in higher education. I wanted to pursue an opportunity like this one to lead Canisius College.
Yeah. I wonder if you could talk a little bit now about what it says here about your sort of religious mission, and talk about the Jesuit aspect of Catholicism. You talk about the Catholic mission and values, how it ought to guide us in our lives.
No, absolutely. And so Canisius College is one of 27 Jesuit colleges and universities in the U.S. And what that means is we were founded by an order. The Jesuits are an order of Catholic priests,
yes,
who follow Ignatian spirituality, St. Ignatius of Loyola.
Yes.
So he and his compatriots at the time founded the Jesuit order. And throughout history, education is one of the things that is synonymous with Jesuits. And so for us at Canisius, how we walk the Jesuit mission today, we talk about forming men and women for others, men and women for others. That's what we talk about when we talk about the Jesuit mission. What that means is students come to us, and one of our core values is care for the whole person, cura personalis. They come to us with whatever they have in their history, whatever they have in their background. They come to us as people with unlimited potential. We care and respect them in a unique way, and we serve them through our educational mission, which for us is transformative learning opportunities. It is mentoring. It is a commitment to academic excellence that propels them to go forth in the world as men and women for others, as men and women who put other people first, the interest of others, which for me was one of the most appealing things about the opportunity to be present at Canisius. When I think about, Mr. Johnson, the global challenges that we face as a society, environmental justice, economic equality, racial equity, the solutions to those major global challenges lie in educating a new generation of leaders who are equity-minded, who think about equity, racial, economic.
Right. So if I may coin this term, the Jesuitism, yes. Jesuitism, if that's the term, still has the place that I see it as, because I tell you, when I was coming of age in 1970, that's when I wrote O-levels in school. And at that time, with the ferment that was taking place in the United States, and then I went to Canada, and going to school there, in some social science courses and humanities courses, the lecturers always used to talk about Jesuits with a kind of hallowed sense. These two brothers, the Berrigan brothers, the role they played in the liberalism that was taking place in the United States. You get a sense that Jesuits are special people to begin with, and then special Catholics, correct? And it was a kind of higher order in Catholicism. That's the sense that I came away with. And so when you hear somebody is a Jesuit, you look to them in a different kind of way, correct?
Yes, that's still very much the case. So to be Jesuit, it is to be associated with excellence, with academic excellence in particular, and with service. But again, when we look at the Catholic orders that founded institutions around the United States, the 27 Jesuit colleges and universities are the largest group of private Catholic universities. And it is because of that centuries, that the Jesuit order, it's 5 centuries old. It is that centuries old commitment to formation and transformation of people through education in service of others. Yes, and so the Jesuitness is still something that is held in high regard.
It has that aura. That aura carries over these decades since the late 60s, the tumultuous 60s, and into the 70s and so on. Correct?
Yes, and when you think about that experience for you, and what was happening in the world at that time, put that in context of today's student and today's global challenges. I think you might agree with me that it's similar in many ways, right? What we're seeing in the world now, in this moment in time.
Yes. And you say, you're quoted here saying, I believe in the transformative power of Catholic higher education because of my life story. Talk a little bit about
that. Absolutely. I would not be here. I would not be having this conversation with you. I would not be elected as the 25th president of Canisius College were it not for my Catholic college experience, my Catholic educational experience, which started in reality before I arrived in New Jersey at Seton Hall. It started at St. Mary's College in Trinidad. It continued at Fatima College.
Yes.
And so growing up in that tradition, and I grew up Catholic, so I've been a Catholic for my entire life. Growing up in that religious tradition, what that meant for me was a grounding in faith, a grounding in a rich intellectual tradition, the Catholic intellectual tradition, the Catholic social teaching, which always, in my mind, and the way I learned it, was about serving others, the least among us, those people on the margins. What can I do? What can we do to create equal opportunities, but to move our society forward by caring for the least among us? That is Catholic higher education. That is Catholic education in my mind. And when I think about growing up, in my house with my family, I'm the first of the four kids my parents have. Coming from there and sitting here and having this conversation with you, having been elected as the 25th president of Canisius College, that comes about because of my commitment and my experience in Catholic education and everything I learned and how I carry that with me every day.
Yes.
And I don't think it's unique to me. I think, and I'm committed to creating those opportunities, those transformative opportunities for other students.
And the interesting thing for me is that, so I lived in Toronto, and in those days, in the 70s and early 80s, Toronto was still, quite white, but it was expanding ethnically and so on. But for a lot of us West Indians, we listened south, so a lot of people live they say the majority of people in Canada live sort of 100 miles from a U.S. border. So in our case, it was Buffalo in Toronto. And we listened to a lot of radio and television from there. And very often on the radio stations, the programs, what they be talking about, that's how I knew this name, Canisius College. There was always something happening there that would be advertised on the radio, WBLK and so on. So I got familiar with that place that way. Canisius College. So the name is... Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I was thinking about that earlier on when you mentioned you spent some time studying in Toronto, because that is fairly close to Buffalo. And so Canisius has a history and a presence there, and we hope to continue that going forward as a pathway to the United States, a pathway to Catholic Jesuit higher education for students in Toronto, in Canada, who would be interested in it. And historically, based on what I've learned about Canisius, they've been always, our students in particular, have always been pursuing this idea of justice. And so, I know and understand in the Buffalo community at Canisius, I follow a long legacy of leaders who care deeply about that community, who care about racial, ethnic, social justice, and what that looks like. So that means something to me, that the institution has that history. And I, as president, have the opportunity to live it every day in my own way, and to continue to move Canisius forward, being a justice-oriented, equity-minded institution.
Yeah, and it says that part of your plan would be to lead transformative institutional projects. You have things in mind that you might want to just give a taste of?
I do have some things in mind, but for me, the most important part of my leadership style is being collaborative, is leading teams, working with and in a team environment. I love that about my football experience. I love that about my legal practice, was working on a team to help drive successful outcomes for our clients. And so what I want to focus on is listening to the campus community, to our faculty, staff, our current students, our friends and collaborators in Buffalo, in Western New York, our prospective students and their parents. I want to listen. I want to take on board what their ideas are, what their vision is for Canisius, and blend that with my own to derive and develop our vision, our collective vision for the institution, and our strategy, our strategic plan. I obviously have my ideas based on my experiences and my understanding of the challenges facing higher education in the United States right now. But it's more important for me to, as a leader, to listen and incorporate that feedback, that dialogue, that engagement in how we develop a shared vision and a shared plan for the institution. In my experience, those have been the more successful ones, leaders who take time to get to know and value and appreciate the opinions of their community.
Yeah, and do you know Dr. Wayne Frederick?
I do not. No.
All right. Well, so he's a Trinidad and Tobago boy as well, who is the president of, or the head of Howard University. He was just given the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, coming from, I heard him talk one time, his mother was a nurse in the Port of Spain General Hospital, and sometimes he used to go there to study because she'd be working and that kind of stuff. So he's head of Howard University. So he was just given the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in these latest Independence Awards, which were given out in the last couple of days.
That is, again, goes back to something I mentioned earlier. It is a privilege to walk in the footsteps of pioneers, of people who have done incredible things like that. And I will, you've given me some homework. I will have to reach out to Dr. Frederick and spend some time with him if he will, if he has any. I know it's a very busy job being a college university president, but hopefully I get a chance to connect with him and learn from him, learn from his path. I always try to learn as much as I can from people who've done it.
All right. Well,
so thank you. Yeah. Thanks for that insight.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on, and it's been a pleasure talking with you, Dr. Steve K. Stoute.
Thanks so much, Mr. Johnson, for the opportunity. Have a great day.
You too. And we hope
take care.
We hope to see each other sometime soon. Good. Well, we move from that down.